Okay, take four because I just cannot talk. But anyway, welcome to Mr. K's Wrong. And in this episode, I am going to debunk a meme posted on Facebook by somebody I used to know that I now call Mr. K. And it's a right wing meme. And here it is. It says, and I'm quoting, Hitler gained control over Germany because his brown shirts, aka the Sturmabteilung, disrupted the meetings and rallies of his opponents with violence. Just keep in mind when Move On, DNC, and George Soros pay Antifa to do same thing when conservatives speak. Pay attention to these similarities so history doesn't happen again. End quote. So that meme is basically bullcrap, and I'm going to explain why. It's actually pretty straightforward. The meme is wrong. It's a false and dangerous comparison, and the central claims that Move On slash DNC slash George Soros quote pay Antifa end quote to attack conservatives, and that Antifa equals the Nazis' SA are not supported by evidence. So I'm going to debunk the meme point by point and then note documented scandals and historical facts showing where U.S. conservatives or Republican aligned figures have been tied to the KKK, the America First slash pro Nazi isolationist movement of the 1930s. That's right. They used to call that America First. And why does that sound familiar? Why does that expression sound familiar? It's not like nobody it's not like, nobody's heard of that in the modern era, right? The America First slogan is dominating Republican politics these days. So it's pretty much on the nose right off the bat. And that they're also tied to white supremacist slash all right actors like Nick Fuentes. So you get the factual context that the meme is trying to weaponize and sort of they're trying to turn reality on its head. The ironic thing is, they're trying to claim quite often that the Democratic Party, because it used to be dominated by Dixiecrats, that they're the real racists. Well, you know, of course, Democrats can be racist individually, but quite often it's the Republican Party that is now looking like pro, the pro Confederate Party with the emphasis of the Confederate flag. And, you have Donald Trump trying to get rid of black history from basically any place that he can scrap it. So, I mean, you've got that, and then I'm going to go over the historical comparison between, the Nazi SA and Antifa. There is quite a difference there. So the comparison is misleading, saying that they're similar. The Nazi SA was a formal paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party whose organized violence and intimidation were central to Hitler's rise. That's well documented by historians. Antifa is not actually an organization. It is a decentralized anti fascist movement made up of many autonomous groups and individuals. It has no central command, payroll, or national organization structure like the SA had. And U.S. government analyses and scholarly summaries emphasize this decentralization and the difficulty of treating Antifa as a single organization. Congress itself has gone over this topic numerous times. So the bottom line is that one side was a party's organized paramilitary force used to seize state power. The other is a loosely connected ideology slash movement without centralized leadership or a known payroll. the analogy collapses under basic facts. All right, point number 2, the claim that Move On, the DNC, and George Soros pay Antifa to attack conservatives is false. Multiple fact checks from groups like PolitiFact and investigations have found no credible evidence that Move On or the Democratic National Committee pay people to carry out violent attacks, and independent fact checkers have specifically debunked claims that George Soros funds Antifa as an organized paid militia, and these claims are a long running conspiracy theory, and they're, of course, perpetuated by people like Donald Trump and his sycophantic supporters. So, funding for mainstream progressive groups, that's grants, PAC funding, or just issue advocacy, is public and traceable. That's not the same as covertly hiring a nationwide paramilitary force. And if someone alleges such a payment scheme, they must show verifiable paper trail evidence, which does not exist. Point number 3, are there documented ties and scandals tying Republicans or conservative movements to the KKK or to pro Nazi slash isolationist groups? Yes, and those deserve honest attention. So I'll list reputable, well documented examples, not to claim every Republican is responsible, but to show the meme's implied equivalence is selective and hypocritical. So, first, on that front, what about KKK endorsements and relationships? Well, the Klan has historically endorsed candidates from both parties at different times, and in modern politics, white supremacist groups have publicly supported some Republican candidates. For example, KKK publications and white supremacist figures publicly backed Donald Trump in 2016. Reuters reported on KKK support for Trump in 2016. And David Duke and the GOP are also relevant here. So, David Duke, a former KKK Grand Wizard, has been a vocal supporter of and at times a candidate in Republican politics. His praise for certain Republican figures, like Donald Trump in 2016, and the subsequent controversy are well documented and were extensively fact checked by factcheck.org and, of course, other organizations. And even though I don't necessarily recommend this, if you want to check out the social media feeds of some of these David Duke type figures, you'll find that quite often they are supporting the Republican Party. And why is that? Why did the Dixiecrats go over to the Republican Party? Well, that was part of the Southern strategy, also known as party realignment. Historians and reputable encyclopedias have described how the Republican Party's political strategies in the 1960s and 70s, often called the Southern Strategy, deliberately sought to win white Southern voters as the national parties realigned after civil rights reforms. That strategy helped shift the racial politics of both parties and is widely documented. This is not the same as a formal alliance with the KKK, but it shows how political appeals to racial anxieties were exploited electorally, and that's taken us to where we are today with the racial grievance politics of the modern GOP. There were 1930s isolationists and pro-Nazi sympathy elements among some conservatives all along. Before the U.S. entered World War II, the America First Committee and figures like Charles Lindbergh were part of an influential isolationist current, and some rallies and groups at the time expressed sympathy for Nazi Germany or opposed aid to its enemies. And Britannica and other historical sources can document those links for you in depth. So go ahead and check those out. Now, that movement was not identical to the later Republican Party, but it shows that pro Nazi sympathies did exist in U.S. conservative circles, and they do exist today. What about the alt right and white supremacist overlap with parts of the contemporary GOP? So, in recent years, white nationalist or neo Nazi groups and major figures in the alt right, like Nick Fuentes, have publicly endorsed certain Republican campaigns or praised political figures. The presence of these extremist endorsements and the way some political leaders responded or failed to immediately disavow has been the subject of mainstream reporting and fact checking, and that's going on even right now. You know, the media is covering the I guess the Nazi problem in the Republican Party, including of course Nick Fuentes, who is really sort of one of the people at the forefront of all of that. And so there are some important takeaways here. The meme invents organizational facts. It needs to make its case, so it lies to you. The SA was an organized, party controlled militia. Antifa is decentralized, and there's no credible evidence that Move On, the DNC, or George Soros operate a paid militia to silence conservatives. In fact, where have they actually been silenced, to any notable degree? I mean, you could say that you could come up with a conspiracy theory that they silenced Charlie Kirk, but good luck proving that in any way. There's no paper trail proving that George Soros was behind that or anything like that. Fact checks repeatedly debunk such fictions. There are real historical and modern problems worth acknowledging, of course. Political movements and parties have complicated histories with racism, segregationist politics, and moments when extremists endorse or influence politicians. Those are legitimate subjects for scrutiny and should be discussed with accurate historical sourcing. For example, the Southern Strategy, KKK endorsements, America First isolationism. But pointing out those scandals is not the same as inventing mirror image claims about contemporary left wing groups without evidence. You know, go ahead and try to give me evidence that Antifa has like a, well, especially something like a high body count or anything like that. You know, where's this need to have them as some sort of national crisis? Tell me the amount of violence that they have been able to perpetrate on a large scale. Go ahead and point to me those examples of like them killing like hundreds, thousands, millions of people to the point where it's one of history's greatest crimes or something like the Nazis or the KKK might be guilty of. So this whole meme is just false and misleading. The Nazi brown shirts were an organized, party-controlled paramilitary. Again, they were a force central to Hitler's seizure of power. Antifa is, yet again, a decentralized movement with no central command or evidence of being paid by Move On, the DNC, George Soros, or practically any other person or entity you could care to name. Independent fact checks and government analyses find no proof of the meme's claims. It's fair to hold any political party accountable for real ties to racist groups, and there are documented cases, the KKK endorsements of some GOP figures, the 20th century Southern realignment, and pre World War II isolationists who sympathized with Nazi Germany. But inventing a modern paid Antifa militia is propaganda, it's not history.